Welcome to another episode of Becca's Talking here, brought to you by Simcoe Heating and Air Conditioning. I can't sing their praises high enough. Here's the telephone number, 402-679-3602, 402-679-3602. I've known Steve and his family for years. Good people that are going to treat you right. It's getting ready now for the winter months. You want to make sure your furnace is not only working, but also safe. Give Simcoe a call, 402-679-3602. Or maybe you were putting off getting the furnace replaced. Last spring it's starting to crap out a little bit, and you said, well, I'll wait. Well, don't wait any longer. Call Simcoe, 402-679-3602 for all your heating and air conditioning needs. Simcoe is the only name you need to know. This is going to be a very interesting, just in our conversation a little bit before we started recording, very interesting podcast here. I think everybody in Omaha knows there are people in this town, well-connected philanthropists, well-connected people, not elected officials, that really get a lot of the work done. They get the stuff done in this city. And my guest is one of those people. Michael Yanney is my guest. He is the chairman emeritus of Burlington Corporation, Burlington Capital. And you have been, I can go down the list of all the boards that you've been involved with, all the charities that you have given to, all of the scholarships and people that you've helped. We don't have that much time. Okay, so before we get to that, I want to get to all the things, your time dealing with Russia during the end of the Cold War, and what you did with agriculture in Russia. I want to talk about all that and so much more. But let's start at the very beginning.
All right.
Okay, we know the folklore of Warren Buffett. He went and started off, buying bottles of Coca-Cola and selling them for a nickel or whatever. Right? That's how he got his start. How did you get your start? What was a young Michael Yanney like growing up in Kearney, Nebraska?
God. Well, first of all, Kearney was a great town for me. My dad died when I was 11 years old, and there were 9 of us in the family. He had a very good job and was well educated, but we had no money. And my mother said to me, 12 years at the time, and she said, you're going to have to get a job, we're going to get your education, but we're going to have to work. So I had my first car accident when I was 12 years old.
Your first car accident?
Yeah. But fortunately, they were nice enough to ignore the age, and I was selling vegetables to the grocery stores and that sort of thing, and I've had all kinds of part-time jobs while I was growing up in Kearney. And one day I was shining the shoes of the president of First National Bank in Kearney, John Spear. And by this time I was a freshman in college at UNK. And he said, why don't you come in and see me? And I said, well, anything in particular? He said, well, I'd just like to talk to you. So I go in and talk to him, and he offers me a part-time job while I'm going to school. And that's how I started out in the banking business.
Had you had any interest in banking before that, or just
No.
what did you envision yourself being as a child?
Well, I was going to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And he came along and offered me a job in the bank, and I was carrying a full load at the college and working about 35 hours a week in the bank. And I graduated in 3 years, and can't thank that community enough for all the opportunities they gave me while I was.
And you've done a lot for the community of Kearney too, and we'll get to that.
I've tried
in a little bit. So now you're working in banking.
Yeah.
And you are basically focused on rural banks, small town rural banks, correct?
Yeah.
And through your connection with agriculture, you end up in a very interesting position with...
Well, that was kind of an interesting story, Tom. I was chief operating officer of first-tier banks And one day, my wife and I were on vacation, and she said, you know, you may be chief operating officer of the biggest bank in Nebraska, but you're bored to tears. And I said, what do you mean I'm bored? I love our marriage. No, I'm talking about your job. And she was a practicing anesthesiologist at one of the first 3 women to graduate from the med school. And she said, well, let's live off my salary for a year, and you go get your own business going. And so one day I walked into the chairman of the board of the bank and told him what I was going to do. He said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to go across the street in the QTAC building, and I rented an office and a conference room, and I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. And he said, are you sure you're okay? I said, yes, I'm okay. And you know, that's how we got started. And it wasn't shortly thereafter I get a phone call from Secretary of Agriculture of the United States, Earl Butz, who I happened to have met through Clayton Yeiter, a native Nebraskan and a great one. And he said, you know, Anatoly Dobrinin is the ambassador to the United States and is the longest-serving ambassador to this country from the Soviet Union. He and his wife and granddaughter would like to come to Nebraska and see agriculture. Would you host them?
Now, was this still during the Cold War? Or was this after the Cold War?
This was 1978.
Okay.
Actually, 1976. And so it was a very Cold War. Mm-hmm. And I came home and told my wife about the call, and Gail said, well, we're not going to have any damn communists in our house. So we went to dinner that night, and both of us kicked it around and said, well, we don't know anything about Russia and Soviet Union, so let's do it. And John Kennefick was at that time the chief executive of the Union Pacific Railroad. And I knew John, and I called him, and I said, you know, why don't we, if you're interested, why don't we take him across Nebraska in your presidential train? And that's how we got started. He came out, and he couldn't believe what he saw. We flew him out in a private plane to one of the ranches in western Nebraska. My God, there was running water, there was electricity. There was a little Piper Cub airplane on the runway there for him. Mm-hmm. And he was a pilot by background, and he asked if Don Forney, the rancher, can I take a ride in the plane? And they flew out over the fences and all that and came back, and that was the beginning of how we got started.
So now you're helping Russia develop agriculture at a time when we are not really all that close to Russia.
Yeah.
Now, when did you first go over there?
1976.
Okay.
I was invited to go over by the ambassador, and I was the guest of what was then the Minister of Agriculture or the Secretary of Agriculture. And they spent 2 weeks flying me around Russia. Got back to Moscow, and I kept saying to myself, boy, this is strange. Why are we doing all this? And they proceeded to tell me that they had changed my visa for another day, and we're going to have a meeting in the Agricultural Executive Office. And they made a proposal that they would like me to raise 25,000 acres of soybeans in 4 different locations.
Now, but you're not a farmer. You're a banker.
I'm a banker.
You're a banker, and they want you to raise soybeans in Russia.
Well, yeah. And I said, well...
Boy, I've heard that story once. I've heard it a million times.
And so I got a hold of Martin Massengale he was the head of the Ag Institute at that time in Lincoln. And I said, I think this is something we ought to do. And our State Department strongly encouraged it. Mm-hmm. So we went over there, and we didn't do 4 locations. We did 3. And we raised 25,000 acres of soybeans. That's a lot of soybeans.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenally successful. And that was how we got started.
Now, so you're raising soybeans there. Now, are you raising soybeans there now as a business venture for yourself?
No, we were raising them for the Russian government.
Mm-hmm. So you're doing this now. Is the State Department paying you, or
no? The Russian government.
Was paying you to do this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you raise that and all of that, and from there you see other opportunities in Russia.
Oh, they just kept coming in, and we did a sizable number of contracts. And then in 1980, I forget, I think it was 1984, I decided that I had enough of it. But I wanted to keep my relationships because I knew the top people in the government, including the president.
Yeah.
And we kept going over there and having meetings with them. And when Yeltsin became president, a couple of years later, I flew over and had breakfast with him, and I said, I'm going to put a fund together with $100 million in it to do venture capital in your country. But I won't do it if you're not going to support me. And he said, let's go full speed ahead. And we started a chicken production operation where we raised chickens and processed them and sold them to the market. When we sold it in 2006 or 7, we were raising 57 million chickens a year.
Well, now I would imagine, just as, I grew up during the Cold War, so I was very suspicious of Russians.
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine that in Russia, they were very suspicious of Americans.
Oh,
What was it like doing business over there and to get them to trust you?
Well, first of all, they found out real quickly we have no appetite for corruption of any kind, and we will not deal with it. So if they trusted us and we trusted them, we went full speed ahead. And I found the Russian people to be phenomenal to work with. And it'd be the same way today, with the exception that you've got a president of the country that's not in good shape.
Are you still doing business with Russia?
Zero. We have in 2005, 6, and 7. Lisa Roskin's our daughter, who runs our company and does a brilliant job of it. Decided that the corruption was over there and we're not going to deal with it. So we sold everything. And now, we had 9,500 employees in various businesses.
Now, if I understand this correctly, though, you make it sound like everything was pretty smooth sailing. But there was a time when, didn't you spend some time being interrogated by the officials, like in a Russian prison, or?
Well, nothing that's really big is without problems. Mm-hmm. I say that about things in Omaha today. If you're really taking on a big project, you're going to have some roadblocks. You've got to learn to deal with those roadblocks. And so we had a guy that we were representing, a very large company in the United States, on a project to build a major plant for them in Russia. And this is when it was still the Soviet Union. And the chief executive and I and his attorney came to the conference room where the meeting was, and we had I had known the guy that was the chief negotiator, very, very capable young man who was a former Russian Olympic swimming champion. Spoke very good English, and I walked in and sat down, and he said, Mike, he said, let's go out in the hallway a minute. I went out in the hallway, and he said, well, I need a new 1985 Chevrolet delivered to my office in New York. And I said, well, you want one or you want 10? If it's in the contract and your government approves of it, we'll do it. No, this is for me personally. Went in and got the chief executive, and I said, I'm out of this deal. He said, well, you can't walk out of it. I said, yes, I'm out of it. We're not going to do it. And it's a long story, but the end result was he defected to the United States, and he had been a counter-spy for the FBI on foreign corrupt practices. I'd still be in prison today for a lousy, in those days, $15,000, $20,000 car.
Wow.
So you don't need any more of those.
Okay, so, wow, talked about all that stuff for hours, but since our time is limited, I want to talk now about your work here in Omaha. So you told me that you met your wife, Gail, on a blind date in Denver, right? And that you were not going to move to Omaha.
That's right.
Right? Now, she was a student at Nebraska Medicine at the time, or UNMC at the time?
She was senior in med school.
Yeah, and so she was here, and you weren't going to move to Omaha.
No.
But you got married, and you moved to Omaha.
Well, we didn't want to live apart.
Uh-huh.
So we got back from our honeymoon. We ran out of money in our honeymoon, so we had to come back early. And she said, "Well, I'm going to move to Denver. I'm not going to let this go on this way." I went to the chairman of the board of the bank in Denver. And liked him a lot. A fellow named Max Brooks. Told him I needed a 2-year leave of absence. Well, let's do it. And I came here and got a job with what was then Omaha National Bank and later First Tier Banks. And Mo Miller was chairman of the, he was president and chief executive. And he became a very big mentor of mine. And I thoroughly decided to stay. It wasn't her, it was me deciding that I liked this city.
And that was, what, 64 years ago?
Would have been 64 years ago that I came here.
So what Omaha was like then versus what it's like now. I mean, I moved here in 72.
Yeah.
And to this day, I will be driving down the street and I'll look and I'll say, now what used to be there? Or I remember when we first got here, my dad took the family on a little road trip, went through the country to go see Boys Town, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how this city has changed over the years, and you've been a big part of that change. How did that all start to happen?
Well, let me say this. Omaha is a unique city. It's really, and I'm not just saying that because I love this city and I'm here on television with you. It's a unique city. We have a city where the public and private sector have learned how to work together. You've never seen anything like it in another city in the United States. And it's people like Walter Scott, Warren Buffett, even though Warren hasn't been active in the charitable side of things, his family has been hugely impacted. And so many of the people that are major contributors have made their money through Berkshire.
Now, I don't expect you to necessarily answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I will see on the wall, and they always have the donor walls at many of these facilities, and there always going to be somebody that says anonymous.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm thinking, that's Warren Buffett. He just doesn't want his name up there.
Well, he doesn't. The Buffett Cancer Center was the first time I've seen him do something of that kind. Mm-hmm. But Warren, and I'm not here to talk about Warren, but he really emphasizes You can make all the money you want, but if your reputation isn't any good, forget it. And you know, that's been instilled in a lot of people in this community.
Yeah.
And reputation is really significant.
You mentioned the Buffett Cancer Center.
Yeah.
I know this is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your participation and just in general, what is going on right now with Nebraska Medicine and the growth and the development and what that's going to mean for Omaha.
Oh, I think I still call it the next project. I think they call it the Nebraska Health Project now. But it's close to a $2 billion project. It's the biggest project of its kind in the history of this state. Now, you know, one of the things we've learned in the community, if you've got really superior leadership, you invest in it. If you don't have the leadership, you better find something else to do. And with somebody like Dr. Jeff Gold, as president of the university and still highly involved in the medical center, he's the type of person you invest in. And you know he's going to deliver. And so there's quite a few foundations engaged in this. And it's amazing to me that we're going to get started on that project now.
Yeah. I live in the area and just see all the growth and the development and what's going on. It's
a city of its own.
It is. It is. The Buffett Cancer Center itself, though, I know you've been active in that. That has really become one of the leading cancer facilities in the country.
That's right.
And it brings people into this area, you know, the doctors and the researchers and that have really contributed to the growth of Omaha. Was it because of your wife's career in medicine that got you so involved in working with Nebraska Medicine? What got you so interested that you would, you know, develop not only all this time and money, you know, but both time and money that you have developed and that you have devoted to Nebraska Medicine?
Well, Tom, that's a really interesting question, because I'll tell you what really happened. When I first moved to Omaha and decided to stay here, I said, I'm going to get involved in community activities, but I'm not going to get involved in the medical center. And so for many, many years, I didn't do anything at the med center. And when Hal Moore became chancellor of the med center, Gail, my wife, said to me, I want you to have breakfast with him. You need to get engaged with him. So, you know, you always listen to your wife. Mm-hmm. I had breakfast with him. Hal was one of these people that you could see the leadership, you could see the dynamism that he had. And I put a little kitchen cabinet together to help him. And that's how we got started with the medicals. And then he was followed by Dr. Gold. And boy, to get two people like that in a row is just unbelievable.
Yeah, he is a fascinating man. Hopefully, maybe one day I'll be able to have him sitting in that chair that you're in right now, because I would love to have a real conversation with him. He's what he's done for Omaha. I don't think a lot of people even appreciate it.
No, look at them. Just since Dr. Gold's been here, we were doing about $70 million in medical research when he came. This last year, we were over $250 million a year. Those are jobs. They're jobs at high-paying, high-tech people. And I think this year we could easily hit $300 million.
Now, I know that, like I said, you've done an awful lot for Nebraska Medicine. Yeah. You talked about the $2 billion project. You helped lead that whole project to get that money. But you've also been involved in other activities here. What are the criteria to make you want to get involved in some project? What, you know, because I know you've been involved in a lot of different stuff. So what makes you say, okay, yeah, this is something I can get behind?
First of all, you have to see the leadership. And you can't do these projects without somebody engaged full-time that's really capable, and who, so many people have vision and they don't know how to execute, or they have incredible ability to execute and they don't have vision. Few people have both. Dr. Gold has both. And that's, you need that leadership. And of course, that's part of the incentive to really go out and find the right people to do things. And I'd have to say to you that this community has some fabulous leaders.
And I want to get to that in a second, because before anybody gets elected, they come to you. So I want to talk about that in a second, but I also want to talk about Simcoe Heating and Air Conditioning, 402-679-3602. Whether you're looking to get your furnace all in shape for the cold winter months ahead, or perhaps, your air conditioning still got some dog days of summer ahead of us. No matter what it might be, heating and air, Simcoe is the only name you need to know. I use them. I've used them for years. I trust these people. You can too. 402-679-3602. So I said, when somebody wants to get elected, it takes money to run a campaign. They come to you. And from what I know, and I don't know a lot, but from what I know just on the surface, you're not like just giving to one party or the other, do you?
No.
Yeah. I mean, you go and you will get behind the candidate.
I want people that are going to work together and make this state a better city and a better state. And getting locked up into a polarization doesn't do anybody any good any place.
I could not agree with you more on that. So then somebody that feels that way, and somebody that's also been so active in trying to build those bridges with Russia, how frustrated do you get when you see some of the stuff that's going on today?
Well, so many people don't understand what an incredible democracy we have, and we must do everything we can to protect that democracy. Our company does business in 16 or 18 countries. There isn't a one of them I'd want to live in. And yes, I'd like to see us protect our democracy. I'm not one of these people that's going to cry and yell and scream about taxes. I don't want to pay any more than I need to. But I want to pay enough to make darn sure we're protecting this democracy. And all of us need to understand, you don't keep that democracy by just throwing bad tomatoes at it all the time.
Oh, man, I again could not agree with you more. And this is such an incredible country, and what we have and what we can have, and we find these artificial ways of dividing ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Whether it be city or rural, different religions, different races, colors, creeds, sexuality, and all that. We find these artificial ways to
fight.
To fight, yeah. That don't make any sense. Because reality is, and you probably, like you say, you're doing business in 16, 17 countries, whatever. We're a lot more alike than we want to admit, aren't we?
We are, And it's amazing how we can go in these countries and find wonderful people to do business with. But you look at what they've got to put up with their government, and it's we have a priceless situation here. And I'm going to do, even at my age, whatever I can to help maintain that democracy.
At your age, you're 90 years old.
90 years old. Just a young folk.
And you're still going strong. You're still going strong. What can, I'm 68. So I'm getting there, and as you well know, it comes by fast. What, in your wisdom of 90 years, what advice would you give to some kid just starting out, or even an older guy like me that, is still trying to keep things going. What advice, what do you know now that maybe you didn't know when you were 25 or 30?
Well, I'm probably not going to answer that directly, but I look at some young man and he's not young, he's 72 years old, Johnny Rogers. Here's a man that really was in trouble while he was in college. And today he's out raising money for scholarships to help underprivileged kids. He's going around from school to inspire these kids to have hope and letting them know that they can go to college and get a scholarship and have a beautiful career. My goodness, that's beautiful to see. And that's it's your reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother used to tell me, you can go make money, but your real value is what you do to help others. And I think all of us need to remember that our real value is in our heart, and you can't take that away from us.
Man, that's what a great way to wrap this up. I'll tell you, that touches me, because I thoroughly agree. One of the blessings I've had with my career is that because of being on the radio or whatever, and TV, and now doing this, I know I've been able to help some people along the way.
Well, look what you've done.
I've done.
You've done a lot yourself.
To my own horn, but I'm proud of a lot of things that I've done.
You should.
And so I do agree. I do agree that we're a lot more alike than we want to admit.
Oh, yeah.
We are. We're basically, people are good. And like you say, take a guy like Johnny Rogers, who turned his life around and is doing some great things.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and to celebrate that and to respect that. And sir, the fact that you're still going strong at 90 and doing all this stuff is an inspiration to me. It truly is, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this, because I know that this is, most of the people, such as yourself, like you said, the people in the philanthropic community, a lot of names people wouldn't even know. I don't know that, many of the average citizens of Omaha know who Michael Yanney was until now, right? But at the same time, you've been a big part of all that we've seen in the last, 60 years or so in this city.
Well, I've been very fortunate that I have a daughter, Lisa Roskins, who's chief executive of our company.
She's great.
And she really runs that company, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So basically, did any major decisions being made there, do you have to sign off on them, or you just sort of look and say, "Yep"?
No.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, I'm going to get her in one of these days. She's an incredible person as well. One last question. I just thought of this. One last question. As I mentioned, politicians come to you with their hands out. Civic organizations come to you with their hands out. Does that ever get old after a while? I mean, do people look at you and think that they just want you for your money?
No, I'm capable of saying yes or no.
Uh-huh.
And I admire people that run for political office. It really takes a lot of energy and a lot of sacrifice. And if they're the right person in my mind, I'm going to help them. But I don't ever give large contributions to political campaigns. I figure that my best asset is to support them and help them raise some money. I don't want them to feel obligated to me.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to feel obligated to do the best job for the city and state that they can do.
Michael Yanney, sir, thank you very much for doing this.
Tom.
I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate you watching these podcasts, listening to these podcasts. Brought to you by Simco, the only name you need to know, 402-679-3602 for all your heating and air conditioning needs. I would hopefully ditch you to go and spread the word about Becca's Talking. Tell your friends about the podcast. Share it, like it, subscribe, all that stuff. And join us here every week as we release a new podcast every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Till then, have a great day. Be well. And